and welcome to the AVForums podcast for Monday, the 3rd of April, a brand new month. And managing to get along for the podcast this week, our assistant editor, Steve Withers.
Oh, sweet cheese and crackers.
And audio reviewer, Ed Selley.
I came here to make the world a better place, but I think I broke it.
Obviously, April is too big a deal for the two marks, so they are missing this week. We've got plenty to talk about this week. I mean, should we start on car programs again, Ed, and bore everybody for the first 9 minutes of the podcast?
It does seem to be quite an either or thing. You're either all for conversation of that nature, or you actually then try and push the earphones that you're listening on into the centre of your brain to avoid it. So yeah, we probably ought to give it a week off.
Oh, I think we'll move on because we're doing our best of the month, and I'm sure that a certain car program is going to turn up at some point come the end of the podcast. So we'll leave it at that. So let's move on to competitions. Ed, what can we win?
Oh, hold on. Let me restore my running order. Right. The 4K Ultra HD Premier Collection is still on at the moment. So that includes The Revenant, Kingsman, The Secret Service, Life of Pi, The Maze Runner, Independence Day, and Exodus Gods and Kings. That runs until the 17th of April, and it's open to all eligible members resident in the UK, Ireland, and Isle of Man.
Have we had any previous competition winners?
Yes, we do. Paul Quadruple 7X. I don't know how he would want that done, or even if actually Paul Quadruple 7X identifies as male, but Paul Quadruple 7X won A Man for All Seasons on Blu-ray. So a hearty well done to you.
Yes, well done. And I'm guessing that you'll need a new TV to watch that on. So let's move on to hardware news, because we've got lots of new TVs to talk about. From Hisense, Steve, a brand which until about 3 years ago nobody'd really heard of. There was initially the opinion that it was cheap rubbish, which people tended to think of the brand that way. But they've certainly come on the last 2 years, really producing the goods, really having some really nice technology within the TVs, and really surprising us.
Yeah, definitely. Like you say, it was actually probably only 2 years ago that they really entered the UK market in any meaningful way in terms of TVs. And I think they've come on leaps and bounds over those 2 years. The first year they showed promise, and I think last year they delivered on that promise with some really good TVs, really well made, high quality, high build quality, great performance, and really competitive pricing. So you couldn't ask for more really out of a TV. And this was their first ever European launch event, and I was very lucky enough to go along to Barcelona, where they launched not only their TV range, but they also do make white goods as well. So they were doing, and they make mobile phones, believe it or not, which I didn't realise until this week, which are quite popular in certain countries, particularly Italy. They're a big brand in Italy in terms of mobile phones, but they also do make washing machines and fridge freezers and that sort of stuff, and TVs. Obviously, the reason I was there was to look at the TVs, and they launched their new range for Europe, but also specifically for the UK.
So you're telling me you went all that way and you ignored the white goods?
No. He's saying he did blatantly. He looked at the televisions because he was on company time, but then would have wandered over to Potter over kitchenware with an actual interest in it, because I know full well that that's as much of an interest for Steve as it is televisions and AV gear. So he'd have been checking it out.
I got to say, it was a great launch because they had this sort of big circular dais in the middle of the room, which everyone was sat on, and there was a range of things behind covers on one side, and a range of things on the other side behind covers, and a big screen in front of you for the presentations. You thought, oh, this is nice. The whole thing moved, so like it was like a big circular, sort of like those things you have in Chinese restaurants that spin around. It was like that, but it moved everyone. So everyone moved around to the left to see the TV presentation and the TVs being shown, and then it moved back the other way to show the white goods. I did film it, Phil. It was pretty dark though, so I don't know whether it really came out for the video, but it was quite cool. And I do know an awful lot about white goods now, particularly fridge freezers, because there was a very long presentation with market research by GfK on it. I probably know more than I would like to know about white goods at this point.
Oh, you lie. You love that sort of shit.
They also did a very interesting presentation with some interesting market research on TVs, and particularly the way the TV market's developing, what's happening, and how it's changing over the next few years. And it's something we've talked about in the past podcasts, but they actually went through who were the dominant players in the TV market in the sort of 70s and in the 80s. So in the 70s, it was very much regional brands. So you'd have like a UK TV brand and a French TV brand and a German TV brand. In the 80s, that shifted more to the bigger players, big European names like Philips, Grundig, Ferguson, if you remember them. Then into the 90s, the Japanese became dominant.
Hang on, the 80s for me was Sony. Sorry, I don't care what anybody else says. It was always Sony.
The 80s into 90s, Sony, Toshiba, Hitachi.
I would say Toshiba was a big deal at the same time, Phil. And it was certainly in televisions, it was a quality equal.
I'd agree with you. You know, hello Toshiba, and I did have one in the 90s. Fantastic CRT with great picture quality.
So all those Japanese TV manufacturers are dominant in the 90s. Where are they now? In the noughties, we got the Koreans turning up, and then more recently we had people like Vestel and TP Vision, and now the Chinese manufacturers like Hisense and TCL. So there's been, it's been a constant change over each decade as different manufacturers and countries become more dominant. And obviously the message they were putting across is, as a Chinese manufacturer, was, look, watch out, here we come. The next 10 years could be dominated by Chinese brands, which I could believe, particularly when you consider that China is 17% of the world's population and 21% of the world's TV market.
Yeah, but the other figures, though, point to it being more expensive to produce there nowadays, and a lot of figures are actually pointing at India, Steve, in terms of when it comes to
move their production to India.
Sorry?
As long as they've got a consumer base. Hisense have got a massive consumer base. So if they needed to move their production somewhere else, they could do. As a company, obviously, as a country, China would want to lose all that production. But yeah, you're right, it is getting more expensive as the country gets richer, and there has been a big move to countries like India and Vietnam and Cambodia, and those kind of places have picked up.
And it'll always come down to the cost of the labour at the end of the day, the cost to manufacture this stuff. That's why you no longer have the European brands being owned by European companies, because it's just not financially viable to make TVs in this country anymore, or even in Europe.
Well, what was interesting
hang on. When I say Europe, I mean Western Europe, not Eastern European countries where it is still economically viable.
Yes, and funny enough, Hisense just built a massive factory in Poland, which can produce 600,000 units a year. They've also got an R&D center in Germany. They were saying that in terms of growth, Eastern Europe is where the growth is, because the Western Europe is largely saturated in terms of TV sales. And interestingly, in China, because it's still growing and there's still a lot of demand out there, but not just demand. And I know this from having lived out that way, that there was a definite mentality of wanting the best. So it's like big screens, even if you've got a tiny apartment, massive screen. And the top quality ranges and the best features, so in terms of not only buying TVs but also buying 4K TVs and HDR TVs and smart TVs, China is a large percentage of that market right now. So anyway, that's all very interesting. What it leads into is their new range for this year, and they call their range the ULED range, so Ultra LED, and the flagship.
Why don't we just call them LCD TVs?
Yeah,
it'd make it far easier, because that's what it is at the end of the day. I mean, we're past the LED thing now, because there's no CCFL backlights anymore, so we're back to LCD TVs again.
Yes, the ULED range is an LCD panel with an LED backlight, and the flagship is the NU9s. Well, there's two. There's the NU9 750, which is a 75-inch direct LED TV, LCD TV. That won't be coming to the UK actually. But the NU9 700, which is a 70-inch direct LED LCD TV, that will be coming to the UK in June.
Prices?
I do know the prices, but I can't say.
All right, you can whisper.
However, I can certainly say that they're competitive, and you'll be pleased if you're looking to buy a new TV. But yes, I think they're going to be competitively priced when they do reach UK shores. And certainly from what indications I was given, for a 70-inch Ultra HD 4K TV with HDR10, quantum dot, they're talking about they were claiming nearly 100% of DCI-P3, 1000 nits of peak brightness. It's Ultra HD premium certified. It has Freeview Play. It's got their new Vida smart platform, which is kind of very similar to what's going on these days with launcher bars and various tiles you can move around, and having everything in a single place and selecting each thing as an app.
So it's their proprietary thing, is it? It's not based on Android or anything like that?
It's not based on Android. It's their own proprietary platform. So they got all that in this TV, 70-inch screen size, direct LED and local dimming, 126 zones on this one. And Yeah, I think that's an impressive, for a manufacturer that's only into its third year in the UK market. That's a cracking flagship telly to be launching with. Beneath that, they have the NU8700 range, which is the slimmer design with edge LED lighting. Again, local dimming. I think that's got 12 zones, so it's got a small number of zones because it's using edge LED lighting. So what it'll do is it'll have the zones going across or down depending on where the LEDs are. I think they're on the edges. And that's, again, Ultra HD Premium certified. So we're talking about, to get that certification, it has to have at least 90% of DCI-P3, has to be able to hit a peak brightness of 1,000 nits on a 10% window. And other than that, it's got all the same features that are on the NU9700 as well, in terms of in the smart platform and everything else, free view play, that sort of stuff. It's got Netflix, of course, and Amazon, and they do 4K and HDR. So everything you could want from a modern TV. And then they come in 55 and 65-inch screen sizes, and beneath that, they've got their sort of their kind of mid-range 4K TVs, which is the NU6800 range, and that comes in a range of sizes from 49 to I think actually that one goes up to 70 inches, and the 70-inch one, and they use direct LED as. Oh no, there's a slim, so they have edge LED lighting. It's the one below that, it's the 5700 range, which actually has direct LED lighting again, yeah, again, the most of the features do trickle down through the entire range. Obviously, the lower ranges aren't Ultra HD Premium certified and don't get as high in terms of peak brightness for HDR, but they do all support HDR10. They will be an HLG. It wasn't officially announced, but I was told behind the scenes that there will be an HLG upgrade coming, firmware update coming in the near future, so it will support that as well. No mention of Dolby Vision, if anyone's thinking about that. And obviously, these TVs do not support 3D, but they dropped 3D last year, along with some of the manufacturers like Samsung. But yeah, I thought that they looked attractive. They looked certainly. I know from experience from last year that the build quality on these, you might think, well, cheap TVs, they're really well made, really solid. I mean, some of the models last year were, metal construction, metal rear panels. I mean, they weighed a ton, but they were really well made. And I think that that kind of level of quality, build quality, is coming through into this year, judging by the panels that I saw at their launch. And I remain impressed by Hisense's ambition. And if they can continue to deliver the way they did last year into this year, I think people will be pleasantly surprised.
There's some interesting. Sorry, obviously I sat through the CES Hisense press conference, and they had a specific section on that they were taking an approach used more commonly with bits of audio equipment and oddly pieces of furniture, where they take a decision to take a punt on making a much larger number of higher quality fixings and components, which they can then use across more ranges, and just basically gamble that the economy of scale takes the pricing of those items down, but it gives the more expensive, the more affordable units a sort of more quality feel as a result. It's interesting that you've actually sort of feel that that's the case once you've got hands on, because I was only looking at pictures of them.
I do think that, and the M7000, which was their sort of flagship last year, was a particularly well-made TV. I would put it up against any other manufacturer's TV. I mean, like I say, the only downside was it weighed a ton, but build quality-wise, you couldn't knock it.
Have to take on board the feedback with Gamma, because that's the one area where there has been no control of the picture quality.
No, there's no Gamma control. That is a definite. I mean, I think the first year that we reviewed them, that was all over the shop, wasn't it, Phil? It was better last year, although again there was no way to select different gammas.
Yeah, it was 2.6, wasn't it? Really?
Yeah. This year, we'd be interested to see how they deliver gamma this year in terms of whether it's A, more accurate out of the box, and B, whether you can actually select different gammas.
Because that was the only one area where they did slip up, really, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Was
yeah, because the first year their colours were a bit oversaturated, well, more than a bit, very oversaturated. I think they were struggling. They were using wider colour gamuts, but struggling to contain them, particularly for Rec 709 content. That was something that they definitely improved on last year. They were a lot more accurate out of the box, and you could calibrate them very accurately for Rec 709. And it did actually track, in HDR mode, it tracked the PQ OTF quite accurately. That was actually quite impressive, even though they weren't that bright. So they weren't getting sort of 1,000 nits kind of thing. Within the limitations of their own peak brightness, they were actually tracking very well and tone mapping very well. So, yeah, I mean, like I say, they've improved year on year in the 2 years we've been reviewing them, and I'll be interested to see how far they take things this year.
Good stuff. So that's Hisense. Let's move on to the cinema. So for well over 100 years now, we've had projected images on a white screen or a silver screen. The screen has changed a little bit over the years, depending on what fad was around at the time, whether it was extra brightness or wideness or 3D or whatever. But cinema, Steve, has basically stayed the same for quite a long time now, and we're going to get onto a conversation which I have no doubt is going to mirror the conversation we had a few weeks back when we were talking about 24 frames a second and higher frame rates, and should we be moving into a more future-like world. Well, this week was CineCon over in the States. It's where all the cinema providers get together and they announce new projectors and all that kind of thing, and Samsung dropped a LED cinema screen which is made up of numerous panels, so it's not just one big panel. Interestingly, it's kind of the same technology that Sony were showing off at CES, Steve, with their CLED. You know, lots of 32-inch, 42-inch size screens all put together to create a bigger viewing experience. Now, obviously, Sony are using that for commercial signage, but Samsung here launching this screen as a alternative to a projected image in a cinema, which I suppose has a few benefits and a few downsides.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously addressing the one thing we've talked about on previous podcasts, which is that, you know, with a projected image, you're never going to be able to deliver those kind of high peak highlights that you associate with HDR on a TV. Obviously, if you're going to make a cinema screen out of a load of TV panels, then that is one way of addressing that particular limitation of the projected image. You can bypass it and use these panels to deliver. I mean, they were talking about, 500 nits, weren't they? They weren't talking about the full 1,000, but certainly significantly brighter than you would get out of any projected image, including laser projection. And I guess that's the way they're looking at it, other than as an alternative way of selling panels. It's a way of addressing the limitations of projected HDR by going for a different approach. Interesting. I mean, obviously, it comes down to a certain number of factors. I mean, we saw the CLED display Sony had at CES, and I've got to say it looked bloody impressive. What did you think of it?
Yeah, it looked good, but it's not. It's digital signage. Like I say, it's you know, that's its specified use, and that's why they were showing it off. It was one long screen. It wasn't very high, that screen, was it? It was only two screens high,
wide,
but a lot wider. So it was used for to give an example of what a commercial signage would look like, and obviously there's a huge market for that. The thing that bothers me about the cinema screen side of things is I can see a lot of benefits of it. It'd be great for, upping the brightness, getting to the peak levels for HDR presentation and so on. But then you're talking about a lot of TV panels all added together. Now, even companies like the BBC, who use this technology for their weather screens, no two TVs look the same. When it comes to colour, when it comes to grayscale. And if you're going to be using a number of these screens, the technology has to work where they are showing one uniform image. So that's my first concern. The other concern is you're going to see the joins. Unless it's done super, super neat, you're going to see the joins between these screens. Hopefully the screen is going to be wide enough in the room that you're not looking at an angle, because we know what happens with colour shift and everything else if you start looking at LED screens from the side. But hopefully the screen's wide enough in that room that wouldn't be an issue. But then you come to the other issues, which I would have to see the technology. It looks promising, but for me as well, there's this other underlying 24 frames a second type argument, which is, and I'm going to say it in a Scottish accent, you just can't beat a projected image.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? Would it feel like you're in a cinema watching a projected image, or would it actually feel like you're sat in front of a massive TV?
Well, you wouldn't,
because they are two very different experiences, aren't they?
You wouldn't have to worry about the lights being on.
No, you're right, Phil. I mean, unless till we see it actually in action, it's all hypothetical. But the joins would be an issue for me personally, depending on how far away you're sat and how seamless it is, how well all the TVs are integrated to each other, get the image nice and smooth across them, and trying to get every single panel exactly the same will be difficult. As you say, it's very difficult to get a bunch of panels to look exactly the same in terms of grayscale and colours. So that would be another challenge. Yeah,
I mean, if professional broadcasters who do, 2 or 3 bulletins a day on national TV can't get it right, what hope is there for the likes of these cinema chains getting it right.
And they would need to be continually, because they will drift, won't they? They need to be continually checked and recalibrated.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, we're talking about the downsides, and I don't want to have a downer on this because I think there are practical ways that this could become really quite a valuable thing to have in a cinema, and it would, as long as chains were giving you a choice like they do at the minute, so you can go and watch an IMAX, or you can go and watch in laser, or you can go and just watch a 2D presentation. You don't have to see it in 3D, and that, as long as the choice is still there, it might be an interesting experiment. It might be interesting to see exactly how that technology works. But I believe there wasn't even an on-site demonstration at CineCon. I think it was just announced that this is what they were going to do.
Yeah, and they don't. I mean, unless I missed something, they weren't making it clear. I mean, are they basically just LCD panels with quantum dot?
From what I could take of the materials that I've read, and obviously Mark's done a news story, they're DCI spec'd. The screen, once everything's put together, is 34 feet. It's a true 4K, so it's 4096 by 2160, and it uses. I'm trying to see how many screens it uses. Very quickly going through this. I can't see how many there are. I don't know how many screens exactly there are, Steve, but certainly the PR that I've seen and the images I've seen, they are separate screens that are joined together to make this 34-foot wide thing. But trying to get the technical detail and so on, as always, it's a bit of PR that's come out with people saying how great it is and all the rest of it. No technical detail in there.
Yeah, I mean, because if they were using something along the lines of the Sony's panels that we saw at CES, those are kind of derivations of the SEER technology that we saw a few years before, where they're using nano LEDs for each pixel, and that was delivering an impressive image, I have to say. If Samsung were going along those lines too with these panels, that would be interesting in the terms of picture quality, but also in the hope that kind of technology might eventually trickle down to the consumer market in some as a consumer TV, because I think we've often talked about that would be the ability to deliver absolute backs and very high peak brightnesses of 1,000 up to 4,000 nits and wide color spaces is obviously the holy grail as far as TVs go. And whilst OLED can deliver the deep blacks and wide color spaces, it struggles with peak brightness. And conversely, if you're looking at an LED LCD television, it can deliver the peak brightness, but it struggles with the black levels. And so something that could do both would be ideal. And if it takes this kind of fashion technology to trickle down into the consumer marketplace, then I guess that would be an interesting development.
I'm really interested to see the commercial development sort the consumer at the minute. I want to see this working because I think it does offer a genuine way forward for cinemas to get away from the projector, to get away from bulb technology and laser technology and so on, and start hitting the brightness levels that it needs to hit for a modern world. So there's one side of me that says 24 frames a second, blah blah blah, and I want to keep it traditional and all the rest of it. But stuff like this does excite me because, like I say, I mean, cinema's over 100 years old, and you feel like something needs to happen. It needs a push from somewhere, and it might not be this technology, but at least Samsung are coming up with a different idea. And if they start pushing it, you can guarantee that other people like Barco and so on are going to start looking at this kind of technology and how they can change the way that we see films.
Yeah, I mean, the cinema does need to do something because things are developing so fast in the domestic market at the moment, in the consumer marketplace, that they're rapidly outstripping what you can see at the cinema, aren't they? In terms of the picture quality, you're talking about, for the next couple of years, we're going to be looking at TVs that can deliver, the full DCI P3 color space. They can deliver peak highlights going up to 4,000 nits, which is what things are being mastered at now for the home. You're going to have 12-bit through Dolby Vision, things like that. So if you're looking at those kind of developments, that means that theoretically you could be getting a better experience at home than is possible to be delivered at the cinema, and therefore they need to address that, and quickly.
Yeah, so let's go to the guy that goes to the cinema on a regular basis. Ed, what's your thoughts?
I'm like the bloke in Futurama. I have no strong feelings one way or the other. I will say you're absolutely right in so much as whilst I am a relatively undemanding viewer of these things, if it was evident that it was a patchwork quilt of very subtly different performing monitors, that would not be good. And I'm pretty sure that even a fairly undiscriminating audience would get pretty hacked off at that. But I do think that Steve is correct in saying that if there is a technological shortfall in the trad means of cinemas doing things, and if this turns out to be cost effective in terms of installation and then in servicing and things like that, I can't see it necessarily proving a non-starter. I think he's right. I think there's almost certainly scope for it to be used. And as and when I wander to the cinema sometime in the next 2 to 3 years, it might be that's what I end up looking at. Who knows?
Yeah, I've got to say I'm not against it. I'm not against any development where we push this along, because, like I say, it's 100 years now, and where have we gone? We've gone from bulbs to better bulbs to laser tech, and laser tech's just starting to come on.
To freaking lasers.
It's taken a while to develop, so it'd be nice to see a bit of a push. And like Steve says, a lot of the time you are getting a better experience at home. And for somebody that does go to the cinema on a regular basis, and a decent cinema at that, not the shed that Steve seems to go to, no fault through Steve.
Not for much longer.
Yeah. So I got a decent cinema, and I've got to say, even though my home cinema has some really nice kit in it and it's really good and it's a real performer, there's still something about that space. There's still something about having other people in there, having a nice big space. That's one thing you can't do at home unless you're a millionaire and you can afford to buy a full-sized 200-seat cinema. There's just something about the space as well, which adds to the whole thing and adds to the sound and everything else, which is very, very difficult to capture at home. But you're right. Looking at some cinemas that are just, run into the ground these days, the experience at home can be significantly better.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. I mean, as I say, we have to judge this, as with so many things, at the level of, what do cinephiles think, what do ordinary members of the public think, and if it improves screen serviceability, reliability, all sorts of things like that, there's always going to be considerations beyond raw picture quality, so to speak.
You're very right there, Ed. And let's move on to an area where you feel a bit more at home. And it is the end of the month, but it's the beginning of the new month. When we record this, it's the end of the month. So, as we always do, we like to wrap up the month in terms of what we've seen and what we've heard, and in your case, Ed, what your favourite album of the month has been, what your vinyl release of the month has been, and if anything on playlists on any of the streaming services has
blown my frock up.
I was trying to think of something to say there, and you've said it perfectly, so on you go.
Right, okay. Favourite album, this is a two-way tie. There's elements of similarity to both of these, but then also they're in some ways very different as well. The first one is an album by a group called Ibibio Sound Machine, obviously. They have been around for a little bit. This is their second album. I'm just going to bring up the actual name of it now because I need to get it right. It's Uyai, Uyai. And it's a blinding list. It's just, it's a lot of fun. It's not quite world music, it's not quite standard conventional dance music, but it's a really good listen. It's the reason why it's a two-way split is because the other album was released with pretty much no notice at all. I'm not 100% sure it's out at all properly in the UK yet, but it is available on streaming services to have a listen to. And this is a band which has cost me a small fortune over the last few years. They are a Dutch New Zealand band called My Baby, and they cropped up on one of my Spotify Discover Weekly playlists, and I thought, that's bloody excellent. Oh, I wonder how much it costs to buy that album. And the question is, it cost quite a lot to buy it on CD or a small fortune to buy it on vinyl, because it was only released in the Netherlands and Belgium. But because I'm an idiot, I bought it on vinyl. And the next one. And I've got this one on order as well. This music defies easy description. They themselves describe themselves as a sort of hybrid of dance music, Delta blues, and other things. It shouldn't make any sense at all, but I promise you it's a cracking listen. The new album is called Prehistoric Rhythm, and it's on Spotify, it's on Tidal, it's on Apple Music. Have a listen, but then also have a listen to the stuff that came before it, because I honestly think these people deserve a lot more attention than they actually get. They are seriously good, and there's some really clever things and proper musicianship to it as well. So those two tie to be my albums of the month. Vinyl release of the month, because the My Baby album isn't. I've got it on order, but it's, as far as I know, it hasn't been released yet. Is a re-release, and it's the last album by Dead Can Dance before they left the 4AD record label. The album's called Spirit Chaser. It was released about a week and a half ago on vinyl. Like the last album that was released through 4AD, Towards the Within, it is just an astonishing sort of demonstration of what the format is capable of if you throw enough money and expertise at the problem. It is a truly unbelievable sounding record, and it's a great album. So that would be my vinyl release. And then finally, playlist. Tidal comes good on this one. Sort of influenced by that Ibibio Sound Machine thing. They've got an album, they've got a playlist called UK Afro Beats. Which is, if you like, a beginner's guide to a category of music that I am almost completely unfamiliar with, which is the London-based Afrobeat scene. It is a 20-track playlist. It lasts a little over an hour. My gut feeling is that you're unlikely to like every single track on it. That's not how it works, but it's an interesting listen, and it's got some cracking tracks on it, and it should provide a useful jump off to various artists and people if that's your sort of thing.
Okay, cool. And we'll get you to put all the information for these into the thread, so people can peruse at their leisure and go and try things on Tidal or Spotify or whatever before they buy, which is always the advice: try before you buy.
Well, yeah, that's absolutely. It avoids Babylon Zoo syndrome, as we call it.
All right, so next is movie news. Right, so movie news. Looks like neither of us have been to the cinema in the past week, Steve. looking at the running order here. I know.
You'll be staggered to learn that
in my
neither have I.
defence, not only because the films I wanted to see weren't at the cinema, my local cinema, I mean, Life and Chips. I wouldn't have gone and seen them otherwise. So yes, it's a bit annoying.
Plus, you've been gallivanting around Europe again, like you do.
Didn't help.
Yeah. You've just not been at work this month, so I guess what all we can really do here is our favourite films of the month, and I think we're going to each pick one different film, because there's only been two really good films, so we may as well give them our favourite film of the month. So I'll pick Kong, just because I haven't seen Logan.
I have seen both, but I will go, since you're picking Kong, which I thoroughly enjoyed. I will go with Logan because it was so different. For a comic book movie, it's a very different movie from what you'd possibly expect. Essentially, a western and a film about death, dying, and growing old, which isn't something you necessarily associate with the X-Men.
Yes, but obviously you've got a real personal interest in that, haven't you?
Yes. But yeah, it was really good, with some cracking performances from Hugh Jackman and particularly Patrick Stewart. I think it was a really good film, and if you haven't seen it, definitely worth checking out.
Having seen the trailer for the new Spider-Man Homecoming, I'll go and see Logan any day of the week. It looks absolute bollocks, doesn't it?
I'm looking forward to the new Spider-Man.
Oh, get away, man. It looks terrible.
He's second only to Spider-Man in superheroes that I just don't get.
Who is?
Spider-Man.
That's what we were talking
Second
about.
only, you said he's second only to Spider-Man.
Sorry, second only to Superman. Spider-Man is second only to Spider-Man. They're all, and that doesn't help. They all sound the bloody same as well.
Yeah.
Lycra wearing bell ends, a lot of them.
I have to agree with it. I mean, sorry, that trailer just looked absolute naff. Really, maybe I'm just getting old, and I've never been a comic book fan, really, of comic book movies, but Jesus, I watched that and I thought it was tripe.
Oh,
Pish?
well,
Would you go so far as to give it full Scottish pish?
No, I wouldn't give it full pish. I think it has to be really, really bad to get full pish.
Never go full pish. I don't know. It's one of those things. I just can't. I recall the excitement over the original Tobey Maguire. I say original when the Tobey Maguire era Spider-Mans, and I just watched them and thought, well, you know, aside from Willem Dafoe eating scenery, that didn't blow my frock up over.
See, this is the problem I have with comic book films altogether and superhero stuff is because the superhero has certain powers, then there has to be a bad guy who trumps that, and this whole sense of, you know, giving into disbelief and going along with it and buying into the universe and all the rest of it. What I find with it is it just gets too bloody stupid and too silly. Whereas I think simplicity would probably be better, a better tact, which is probably why I'd enjoy X-Men Logan more than I would this Spider-Man. I think it just looks naff to me.
Well, there you go.
I mean, the actual bit where the spider in his uniform suddenly pops off and goes flying off on its own. What's that all about?
Because his suit's provided to him by Tony Stark, so it's got all these gadgets built into it now.
When's Tony Stark ever been in a Spider-Man film?
Well, of course they've never been in a Spider-Man film before, but that's because, you know, the rights have been with different companies and this different studios. Well, now that Sony have got together with Marvel to do the new Spider-Man films, Spider-Man is part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, so they can use things Marvel have been doing, like Iron Man.
Yawn.
I don't know, Phil, did you see, obviously, on Twitter yesterday, aside from, you know, the UK, you know, doing that minor business over Article 50, that bust of Cristiano Ronaldo? Did you see that GIF of where they've shopped Cristiano Ronaldo's face into the Iron Man suit as it is with the mask lifted off, but then the mask drops down and it's the bust face on it. It's absolutely fantastic.
Twitter and Facebook has been an absolute pleasure the last couple of days with all the different memes and stuff that have been popping up with that. It's hilarious, really is. And
the other one I liked was someone had taken the photo of Theresa May writing the "Dear Europe, f*** you" letter, and then just cut it so it actually looked like what it was the the letter from the Zodiac killer, which it just seemed quite appropriate, really, you know. So yeah, all good. I say I'm off to Germany next week. I'm looking forward to airports have got passive since this whole business started. Airports have got passive aggressive down to a fine art, because when a flight from the UK turns up, they either close all but one of the passport aisles. They just file you through the non-EU nationals thing anyway, just to punish you.
I know it was bad when the vote first happened, but I thought all that had sort of blown over since then.
Well, it's been a while since I've travelled out. So we'll see what happens. It's
well, I mean, Steve's been all over Europe this week.
Yeah, I haven't had any problems. I mean, I always feel a bit guilty when I get to Europe now. Like, I'm really sorry we told you all to sod off. It wasn't me. But I had more trouble getting back into the UK than getting out of it. I've got to admit, on this last trip, because it's
just because they don't want you back, Steve.
They don't want you back.
They want me back. Yeah. So it'll be interesting. But I mean, we will have one eventually. You know, in 2 years, it will be a question of we won't be able to go through the EU. It's going to be a real pain in the arse actually travelling around Europe in the future, isn't it? 'Cause we have to go through.
Well, there's a thought. All the Remainers, when they try to get back in the UK, we can just say, no, you want to remain in Europe, stay in Europe.
I still wait with interest to see what the terms of this associate citizen proposal actually is. And my gut feeling is that obviously the nature of it can't be free to be an associate citizen of the EU, because that rather undermines the requirements of EU membership for the people who are already EU members. So I wait with interest to see for people who, you know, keep throwing my social media with all this excitement over the associate citizens thing. I want to see how many of them actually sign up when the costs come in, because it won't be free.
It's something that I don't even know anything about, Ed. way over my
Well,
head.
For my sins, I try to keep tabs on these things, but yeah, all good. I mean, there's some other real sort of weirdness going on. I mean, the thing is, the problem with Brexit is it the whole business distorts, and you sort of end up missing things in the news which are, kind of significant. Like two things. I mean, I keep an eye on Northern Ireland because my wife's got family out there. Obviously, at the moment, the functioning government in Northern Ireland isn't. It's completely under civil service control, but that doesn't seem to have made it into the news in any significant sense. The other thing is that essentially senior members of the UK civil service and one or two ministers have pretty much acknowledged that there is almost nothing to stop Northern Ireland just essentially not notionally becoming part of the Republic, but to all intents and purposes joining with the Republic in a customs union sense of the word, just to prevent their border becoming a gigantic and uncontrollable. Well, I was going to use a word starting with cluster, but there's some real strangeness happening, and that's without bronze busts of Cristiano Ronaldo. So all good. I'll dig out some information and email it to you at your leisure.
Thanks. I'll make sure I hit the spam button.
Store it in you.
So we were talking about. Well, I'm not sure what we're talking about. Favorite films of the month. So, favorite films of the month. Kong. It's 7 out of 10. Bit of popcorn fun, and Logan's depressing as hell. But probably better than the new Spider-Man's going to be. Does that sum it up?
Yeah, probably. I've got my ticket booked for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 at the end of April.
End of April. That's miles away.
Not a month away.
Presumably you've got your Fast and the Furious ticket squared away.
I have not yet, but I will be quite soon, yes. Fast and the Furious, Guardians of the Galaxy, Ghost in the Shell, and Free Fire are the ones I want to see. Those two, the latter two open up this weekend that we're recording this podcast. But I'll be in Spain again, so I'll have to see them next week. But,
yeah, we really feel sorry for you as well. Although sadly, you didn't get a red head. I was hoping that when I opened up these video clips, I was going to get a clip of you talking to a camera with your noggin being bright red like it normally is when you get a bit of sun.
Expat skull.
Right, so anyway, moving on from Red Skulls to films coming out this Friday at the cinema.
Red Skull was the villain in Captain America film. There you go. Trivia for you. Films opening this Friday, we've got Aftermath, which is the new film from Arnold Schwarzenegger as he tries to resurrect his film career, unsuccessfully I might add, in which he plays a survivor of an air crash who has a connection with another survivor from the same air crash. Don't know much about it, but I know it's part of Arnie's attempt to do more serious stuff than he has been in the past. And since I think he's been recently fired from The Apprentice, then he probably could do with a hit movie, because I don't think his career's been going that well since he stopped being the governor of California.
He must be well into retirement age now. In fact, I'm still.
He's got to be 70 odd, isn't he?
It must be. Ed?
Hold on, I don't know. I thought he was slightly younger than Stallone. Not that that's saying much. He's 69, dude.
There you go. Then.
Right, something wrong with you and Mike, Ed. You're just rubbing against something.
Sorry, yeah, I'm sat in the comfy chair, so I was slightly reclined. How
Too
very
comfy.
dare I?
Yeah, don't get too reclined, you'll fall asleep.
No, I'll be all right.
Although
he's 69. He'll be 70 on the 30th of July.
All right, so he's younger than I thought he was. I thought he was into his 70s there. So it just seems to have been around a long time.
He's a year younger than Stallone and 8 years younger than Chuck Norris, who is
Chuck
77.
Norris is nearly 80.
Yeah.
Bloody hell. Right, anyway, so that's Aftermath, the new film from Schwarzenegger. We've also got The Boss Baby, an animated feature from DreamWorks.
I saw this trailer. It makes no sense whatsoever. It completely lost me. Lost me.
It looks like Look Who's Talking, but with none of the deft, wit, flair, or just originality.
And also there's Going in Style, which is actually a remake of Martin Brest, who made Beverly Hills Cop and Midnight Run, among others. His first film's called Going in Style. Was about three aging villains who have one last caper. And my friend told me, they've remade Going in Style. I said, yeah, who's in it? And he goes, well, just try and guess if you had to cast three aging blokes, an American movie, three aging guys, who would you cast? And I went, Morgan Freeman, Michael Caine, Alan Arkin. And he went, yep, those are the 3 blokes they've cast. All right, okay. So usual suspects playing aging villains one last time. And I did wonder why Michael Caine wasn't, because
it's got something to do with their pensions, though, hasn't it? Seemingly they lose their pensions, do they not?
Have they updated it a little bit then? Is that why
I think it's something to do with that. I could be wrong. I could be getting it mixed up with another film. But I think it may have something to do.
They got made off.
I think that their pension company goes bust or goes into receivership or whatever, and they lose their pensions. So this one last job is to basically get their pensions back. I think that's the plot.
Because in a couple of weeks' time, the Hatton Garden Job comes out in the cinema, which obviously is about the Hatton Garden Job, and I was staggered that Michael Caine was not in it. I was thinking, like, surely his name is all over that film. Aging East End villain, got to be Michael Caine. But obviously he was too busy making this other film about an aging villain, trying to get his money back
and denying he's ever been locked in an attic on Twitter. He's finally deleted that legendary tweet, which is very bizarre. So that's his other major activity these days.
Right, okay, so let's move on. Our favourites during the last month in terms of Blu-rays. I'll put my hands up now. The last thing I watched at home was Deepwater Horizon, which was more than a month ago. So I'm out on this one. Ed?
Yeah.
Well, I haven't watched it on Blu-ray, so I need to stress this. We got it on through the Sky On Demand thing because my wife wanted something to improve her mood whilst doing her tax returns. I watched Moana, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really good. And can I say on a specific and personal level, because these things matter to me due to the nature of my home life, can I just say that the song How Far I'll Go is, by roughly the distance of the Earth to the Sun, a better song than Let It Go from Frozen. And I have far less trouble with people coming in and singing that than Let It Go, which is shit.
How did you see Moana doesn't come out till Monday?
It's on the Sky. You can get things through Sky. So
I watched it as well last week. I watched it on US Blu-ray and thoroughly enjoyed it and thought The Rock was brilliant in it.
It's a very pretty film. It's very clever. It's quite knowing. You know, it's like you're a girl with an animal sidekick. You're clearly a princess. I mean, I thought that was most amusing, so on and so forth. So yeah, I that doesn't count in an absolute sense. The only other thing I bought on Blu-ray and watched was Star Trek Beyond, which I quite enjoyed as well. So yeah, that's where I sit on this. But no, Moana, that was really good. Most impressed.
I was going to go with Moana as my choice for the month because I really enjoyed it, and it's a stunning looking disc, both in 2D and 3D. For those of you who still like 3D, it is a great 3D disc. And I thought The Rock was great. And even though he can't really sing, I think You're Welcome was still a really fun song.
It played to his specific talent sachet in that regard, yes.
I was just trying to think if I've watched any other Blu-rays this month.
You mean gallivanting all over Europe, so no, you haven't, have you?
Well, I mean, I don't really buy that many Blu-rays anymore, so it is a bit tricky on the Blu-ray front quite often to find something that I've got.
So, Steve, what can we buy on Blu-ray this week?
Well, conveniently enough, Moana comes out on Monday in 2D and 3D Blu-ray. We've also got Allied, which is the Robert Zemeckis film with Marion Cotillard and Brad Pitt. Brad Pitt is the least convincing French-Canadian I've ever seen. That's available on Blu-ray. It's interesting. It will be coming out on 4K Blu-ray as well, but not yet, although it's already available in the States. But it is coming out on Blu-ray on Monday. It's an okay film. I kind of enjoyed it, but I did feel like I say, Brad Pitt just didn't convince at all. His French accent was crap, and he just didn't convince as a French Canadian whatsoever. And also, I think its grip on historical accuracy was a bit tenuous at times. We also got Snowden, which I did enjoy. That's obviously Edward Snowden, a film about Edward Snowden by Oliver Stone, with Joseph Gordon-Levitt in the lead role. And that tells the story of what Snowden did and why he did it, I thought, quite well, and had some interesting stuff about how this, I mean, obviously this has come out again more recently with the stuff about the CIA using things like cameras on Samsung TVs to spy on people. All that stuff really in Snowden. I mean, they've been doing it for a long time, using phones on laptops and mobile phones. Cameras on laptops and mobile phones, etc. And that's all covered in that. And I thought it was a very interesting film. And Solaris is coming out on Criterion Blu-ray, which is the 1972 Russian classic, which is kind of always considered to be like the Russian 2001. It's a very interesting film, worth seeing if you haven't seen it. And also coming out this week on DVD is Wheeler Dealers season 13.
Get Ed while you can.
Well, either that or just tune into Discovery Shed or Discovery Turbo.
Yeah.
most days of the week.
Or there's also Spike, and it turns up on other channels as well.
There is in the same way that if you wanted to watch most of the output of the original Top Gear presenters, Dave's got you covered. This is exactly the same situation. There's no shortage of immediate editing.
It's not something I would rush out and buy on disc, I think, is what we're saying here.
It's the message we're probably trying to convey.
Yeah. And the other thing about the CIA, looking at cameras and laptops and all that, what a boring job that must be. Yeah. I mean, just sitting looking at fat people just sitting scuffing their face while looking at porn on the internet. A horrible job that is.
It'd scar you for life, couldn't it?
It would certainly point to some of the more peculiar practices that have sort of come to light about members of the intelligence agencies around the world. Fetishes involving suitcases and all sorts of crap. So, yeah.
I've got my webcam turned on at the minute. God help the person spying on me.
Well,
my webcam's off, but I don't know. Maybe it's on.
I don't know about mine. No idea. Look, if you really want to stare at me whilst I just get in a strop because dragging and dropping image, I've much as I love this laptop, it's got a sort of Poundland take on the Apple trackpad, and it's most of the time it works perfectly well, but for dragging and dropping images into the AVForums CMS.
Yeah, I mean, I use the same laptop as you've got as my calibration laptop, and I have to say now and again it has a life of its own where it'll just flick pages or it'll go back to the last thing you were on, and I didn't want to do that. I just wanted to move the cursor up, and it's just got a life of its own. It really has sometimes.
So I take that as a small price to pay. I love the keyboard, and I spend most of my life typing. So
I tell you what, I'd really love is this new keyboard on my new iMac. That's fantastic. I actually want to write stuff now.
Easy. But yeah, a good keyboard makes all the difference for these sort of things. I mean, for many years I continued to use an old Packard Bell mechanical keyboard complete with PS2 socket instead of more modern, simply because it had proper typewriter-like demounts to it, and it was the most satisfying thing to type on. But my wife threw it away because she couldn't stand the amount of noise it made whilst I was typing. So.
Yeah, so I mean, I've got the old Apple keyboard, the Bluetooth one for using with my MacBook Pro, and I thought that was great for typing on. But the difference between that and this new one on there, it's just, it's lush. It's just the key action, Ed. It's just fantastic.
Also, as I say, I let you know by Facebook message, in a white goods update, Dyson has now been banished from the house. I took it to the recycling centre with a spring in my step, and a Miele Hoover has replaced it, and it is better in every single way. It's just night and day. Dyson advocates, I mean, I appreciate you and your cordless stuff. Yeah, that's all well and good. But as a device for sucking crap off carpets, not even close.
You need it more than I do, Ed.
This is true. Yeah, the house has to be kept vaguely presentable for the number of people coming through, and I have a small muck-producing device in the form of my son. So
yeah, exactly. So I mean, I don't have any of that.
And 2 cats.
So.
So I thought, obviously after the surprising success of the White Goods podcast, I thought I'd just update on that.
You know that it's the least downloaded podcast that we've done in the last.
All right then, so they're not actual success.
I maybe shouldn't have called it the White Goods edition.
People think it actually is a White Goods special.
Well, I named it the White Goods special, so I think they've taken it quite literally. That's not for me then. Another one to point out is that we've got a new forum. Food and drink, and I've got to say that this forum is far more appealing to me than the one that sits below it, which is health and fitness.
The yin and the yang there.
Yeah, they're sitting next to each other there, and I've always been scared of looking in the health and fitness one, but the food and drink, I'll be straight in there. And I've got to say, Ed, I'm looking forward to your addition in there when you add your Ed's World of Beer. Thread.
Yeah, we'll crack on with that. And as I say, there's a number of committed other forum members who have the same posh spin on alcoholism that I do. Although I need to stress once again, I have not consumed an alcoholic drink.
Yes, you keep going on and on and on about it. We get it. All right, you're dry. Well done.
Well, for the moment. When I go to Germany, it's let's face it, the Germans understand coffee, mineral water, and beer as
well, that's all you need to get along in life, isn't it?
This is absolutely true, but as I say, it's
and the odd bit of German sausage.
Well, it was funny. They when the Yamaha people sent through. It's like, are you interested in the meat or the fish option? It's like, where are we going? Frankfurt. So inland in Germany. I think we'll go meat, thanks. Let's play to their strengths.
I've got to say, I've always liked the cuisine in Frankfurt. It's
provided that you aren't a vegetarian, German cuisine is pretty damn good by all accounts.
Yeah, I really enjoy it. Even the more traditional currywurst and that kind of thing. I love currywurst. Fantastic.
Well, the thing is, Belgian cuisine is where it's at, because that's sort of French concepts with German portion sizes. It's everything you could possibly want in a national cuisine.
Yeah,
and plenty of beer to wash it down with. So that's all good.
Yeah, totally. So we got a brand new forum. It's called Food and Drink. Go in there, and we're going to be updating on the podcast, probably fortnightly rather than getting Ed to drink on a weekly basis. However, Mark Hodgkinson has said that if we talk about beer, at least he's got something he can talk about on the podcast. So there you go.
Surely this would be a point where Mark's recipes should stage
an unwelcome comeback,
undignified return. Using our new skills in video production, maybe this is the point where Mark launches himself as the most unlikely television chef in the known universe.
Yeah. Well, I guess, when it comes to food and drink, it's something, well, we all need food and we all need to drink something on a daily basis. But in terms of the hobby, in terms of, watching films and all the rest of it, I can't sit down and watch a film without having something to drink and something sitting on my lap that I can snack on when watching films and so on. So I think it's a perfect fit for us lot. Far better fit than health and fitness is for the AV enthusiast out there. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the hobby... I think
that's a safe bet, Phil.
The hobby, involves you sitting on your arse watching films and eating snacks. So it doesn't really fit in the health and fitness category.
Yeah. No, but it's horses for courses and all that. So, but...
I guess you could watch a fitness video, couldn't you?
Oh, I've just got this horrible image in my head now of the AVForums fitness video.
In a world where pornography in all of its many flavors is available, broadly speaking, why would you? It's the equivalent. It's the equivalent of trying to, palm one out over the H&M catalog, isn't it? As I say, the internet continues to prove that Rule 41 is inviolate.
Oh, I'm sorry, I can't get this image out of my head. AVForums health, the fitness video.
Well, I don't know. It could be a sleeper classic in the horror genre. Anyway.
Just everybody in their leotards.
Right. Well, I don't want to steal Phil's thunder here, but I do need to sort of put this to bed. Are there any exciting 4K Blu-ray releases this month, Steve?
Yes, there are. Very late entry because it only came out on Monday of the week we're recording this podcast. But I thought the Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them was a fantastic Ultra HD Blu-ray. It was shot at 6.5K on the Arri Alexa, and it's a 4K DI with Dolby Atmos soundtrack, and it looks and sounds stunning. And for those of you who think that physical media might be dead, it sold 172,000 DVD, Blu-ray, and Ultra HD Blu-ray together. 172,000 units on Monday on its first day of release.
I can guarantee that not a lot of that will be on UHD, because I walked into Tesco to buy it and it was 25 quid. I'm sorry, but that's just a bit too much. When the DVD's sitting there at $13.99.
Yeah, but I wouldn't want to watch the DVD.
Sorry, I meant the Blu-ray sitting there at $13.99. Or you can have a little bit more detail for 25 quid.
Well, yeah, but this is the nature of it, isn't it? Ultimately, it seems at the moment it's very much like the ambitious sort of structuring for record pricing as well. So you're suffering the similar sort of things. You suffer for our art. I
am a man who used to spend £60 a time on a single CLV laserdisc. But
at least you got a whacking big box with that.
Exactly.
Big packaging.
Yeah, you got something to look at and something to play with. But I don't know what it was. I just saw that and I thought, no. If it had been £20, not a problem. I would. I think it's just this psychological thing. 20 quid, not a problem. I'll have it. But 25 quid, it's just I was like,
so 1999 is the cutoff point for you, isn't it?
I have to be honest. There's something about this because it's a psychological breakpoint for new vinyl that I have an issue with. I mean, it's a bit more complicated because there's doubles and there's limited editions, which do sometimes sort of distort this. But if you are asking me to pay for a single 12-inch record, I generally, the moment that you suddenly want more than £20 for a single record, then we have a problem.
Yeah, I don't know why it is, but it's if it'd been 20 quid, I would have picked it up and wouldn't even have thought about it.
Supermarkets, take note.
Of course, if I had as much money to burn as Steve does.
Well,
I said did.
Can
I just say that as well? Sainsbury's, I believe, Sainsbury's is obviously they made a big hoo-ha about starting to sell records, and they've stuck with it. And there's actually a surprising number of the damn things in my local Sainsbury's. They appear to be just doing their best to drive me insane, because what happens is I will hunt down a record, not either for a first pressing or a re-release pressing that's otherwise unavailable, buy it, and then Sainsbury's will mysteriously secure copies of it for less the following week.
I think they're just trolling you, Ed.
Yeah, well, can they just stop? Because it's really annoying.
You see, my Tesco, it has UHD Blu-ray and all the rest of it. No vinyl. Not a sign of vinyl in there, Ed.
I don't believe there's UHD Blu-rays in my Sainsbury's, but it's got some cracking records. I bought Depeche Mode's Violator the other day.
Yeah.
Great.
So what do you get in Waitrose, Steve?
I shop in Sainsbury's and it's the same as Ed's.
All right. Okay.
So vinyl, but no.
For some reason, I had you down as a Waitrose guy.
I use Waitrose. I got access to all the supermarkets. Waitrose, provided you go in there with iron discipline, it's great. Good quality ingredients, and it's not significantly more expensive. The problem is that they get you when you start buying nice things. It's like, oh, posh Scotch eggs. I'll have 3 of those. And
Well, what the hell's a posh Scotch egg?
Oh, they do there's one on the deli counter. It's just a sort of it's just basically a very high quality example of a Scotch egg, and it's really nice. It's a pound a go, which is
slightly running inside.
No, it's not a hot Scotch egg. It's still a cold one, but it's just really nice. I just get very excited about them. But there is a pub near me called the Betsy Wynn, which does a hot Scotch egg, and it's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I've had one of those. Fantastic.
I'd live on those, except for the gown.
Again, if you want to take up this conversation or these conversation points, we do have a new food and drink forum on the forum.
Fair enough.
Just to wrap up our favourite TV of the month very quickly, I'm going to say Top Gear. Now, now everything that we discussed last week, Ed, I don't know if you listened to the podcast last week, it all ended up on the cut room floor.
No, as did much of last week. In fact.
Most of last week. Let's say 50%, because we recorded for 2 hours, 50% ended up on the cutting room floor. So I'm going to say Top Gear. I'm not going to ramble on as much as I did last week, but I think there's promise there in the format. They're doing some things really, really well. They're doing other things that just really winds me up. Something rotten. The one this week was the Pac-Man thing with the 3 cars, and I'm sure it was great fun for the presenters who were driving around this maze that was made up of containers and all the rest of it. I'm sure they had a great fun. It was shit TV. It was really, really bad TV. I have no interest in it, and what's the viewer supposed to get out of that? It didn't make any sense to me. However, in the same episode, they had the Bugatti Veyron, the Chiron, sorry, and that piece was fantastic. It was really, really good. And again, it was Matt LeBlanc and Chris Harris, and they got on really well, and the chemistry was there and all the rest of it. So it's blowing hot and cold. It's blowing a little more hot than cold for me. So it's the only thing I'm interested in on TV at the minute, so that's my pick. Steve?
Even though I was slagging it off last week in the stuff that was cut from last week's episode. You know what's depressing about last week's episode of our podcast was that was the good 50% that we put out. But yeah, I was slagging off Iron Fist and saying it wasn't up to the usual standards of Netflix Marvel series, but actually it's kind of grown on me, and I'm just finishing it off now, and I have thoroughly enjoyed it ultimately. So not as bad as I thought it was going to be, and it is about the only thing. I mean, and also. The Walking Dead has been picking up a little bit in the second half of season 7, but but for me probably I'll go with Iron Fist. That's being about the only TV series I have managed to watch this month.
Okay, and Ed?
Fortitude, I think. It's still very up and down, still doesn't really know what it wants to be, but it does have moments that are brilliant, and I've enjoyed it. It's been fluff and it's been filler and it's been good. And also special shout out, I'm sure Steve hopefully caught it last night, MasterChef has kicked off again, and we're at the good end of the program with delusional people who think they can cook but can't.
Okay, I think that's about it for this week. We've almost outstayed our welcome once again, so my thanks to Steve Withers.
I mean, I am just a dumb bunny, but we are good at multiplying.
And Ed Selley.
We may be evolved, but deep down we are still animals.
Don't forget, you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook, bookmark AVForums for latest reviews, news and video, and of course, leave us those 5-star ratings on iTunes, but only if you enjoyed the show. I'm Phil Hinton, thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you again next week.